wherever we are on our journey, there is something that we have to share. There's some experience there. We don't have to really wait until we are getting older to do it. We can do it now. And so that was where it really started initially. But as it relates to the book Valley Flower, that inspiration came in around January of 2020. Yeah, I was actually away, not in Jamaica, and just kind of reflecting on my whole life.
What if writing a book is not just a way to transform the lives of many people, but also a way to create financial freedom and leave a legacy? Wouldn't you want to find out just how to do that? Well, that's what this show is all about.
Hi, I'm Hennika Watkis Porter, speaker, coach, author of Podcast Power, and the host of the Entrepreneurial You podcast, inviting you to listen to the Authorpreneur Secrets podcast, brought to you by C. Ruth Taylor, best-selling indie author and the Caribbean's most trusted voice on entrepreneurship. Tune in for inspiration, information, and innovation to write and win with books. Get ready to dominate entrepreneurship.
Greetings, entrepreneurs. Welcome to another Authorpreneur Secrets podcast. This is episode 15. I'm your host, C. Ruth Taylor, and this is a show where we give you the roadmap to win with books beyond book sales and dominate entrepreneurship. Our goal is to empower independent authors in the Caribbean and the diaspora to write more books and then leverage those books for maximum impact and income and leave a legacy. And one of the things we're trying to accomplish in publishing is to change the narrative about the Caribbean and about our people. And today we're continuing that focus of highlighting the good in Nazareth. And our author today is an example of the good in Nazareth. And Nazareth today is Olympic Gardens. And today we're going to be highlighting Dr. Plunkett. She's the author of the book Valley Flower, and it's about defeating oppressive and non-progressive cycles. But before I get into our interview, let's have a word from our sponsor, Frame Art Jamaica.
Come to Frame Art Jamaica Limited for your one-stop framing, graphic design, and printing needs. We frame photos, certificates, paintings, t-shirts, and so much more. You can also get high-quality prints and framing done in a quick turnaround time to fit your budget. Visit Frame Art Jamaica at 22C Old Hope Road, Kingston 5. Weekdays 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Call us at 876-929-3058 or visit us at info@frameartjamaica.com. Serving you for over 30 years.
Author Dr. Plunkett is a public health professional from Jamaica. She has been in the health sector for more than 20 years. She is one of the shining examples from Olympic Gardens in Jamaica, which is one of the communities that people don't expect anything good to come out of. People only hear of the community when something negative is happening. But we want to use even this platform to highlight and showcase the good from Olympic Gardens. And Dr. Plunkett is one of the shining examples from Olympic Gardens. This is her first book. The book is Valley Flower, Defeating Oppressive and Non-Progressive Cycles. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Dr. Plunkett.
Thank you so much, Ruth Taylor. I appreciate it, being invited to be with you today.
So, Dr. Plunkett, tell us about your author journey and how you came to write this book.
Okay. First, let me say that I always thought I would write, but I thought that would be, when I retired. And then I look back on all my years, and then I feel I will have something then to say. And it was my conversation with you at some point where you said, wherever we are on our journey, there is something that we have to share. There's some experience there. We don't have to really wait until we are getting older to do it. We can do it now. And so that was where it really started initially. But as it relates to the book Valley Flower, that inspiration came in around January of 2020. Yeah, I was actually away, not in Jamaica, and just kind of reflecting on my whole life and, going into a new year and what I wanted to do. And in reflecting, I realized that, there was so much that has occurred over the years. And I also realized that there were experiences that I was noting that I was already, sharing with others, and felt, I do have something that I could actually see that could be beneficial to somebody else. So the journey actually started there.
All right. So for those of you who are wanting to write a book, notice what she said, that it was a conversation that led her to think about writing, although she initially thought this is something she was going to do after she retired. So you don't have to wait until you retire to write a book. If you feel you have something worth sharing and a message that will help others, then you can write about it and you can turn your story into a book. Valley Flower, it is about learning to thrive in your valley and defeating oppressive and non-progressive cycles. Can you tell us a little bit more about those oppressive cycles and non-progressive cycles that you are speaking of in the book?
So in the book, Valley Flower, I looked at 4 cycles that affected me personally throughout my life. And those are the cycle of deprivation, no negative self-sacrifice. Let me use the other words. Insecurity, the whole issue of evasion, or what we would normally call procrastination. And of course, the whole issue of fear. These are not, new things really. Most people struggle with these things. But I share my own story in terms of giving examples of how these affected me. Like, for example, with the cycle of fear, I looked at how I was afraid of failing, how I was afraid of poverty, how I was afraid of death, and so those are the issues. But just to kind of, look at what these oppressive and non-progressive cycles are really about. When we say oppressive cycle, we're really talking about an influence that kind of prevents you from taking control of the direction of your life, really. And that can be internal, it can be external. And so we talk about internal, looking at our own mindset and our own belief systems that foster certain practices and behavior that continuously keep us in a cycle of doing the same thing, the same negative things, because we can have good cycles too, right? But so that's it. And then the whole oppressive factor then leads to non-progression, because you keep rotating, you keep going around a circle. So really you're stuck. There's no forward movement. You can be deceived to think that you're moving because you're going around in circles, but there's no advancement, there's no progress. You're not moving into what I would call your divine purpose, or what you were here to do. And so that's how I, define it. And these issues for me were those limitations.
Awesome. So you're dealing with self-deprivation. Your book talks about overcoming the fear that holds you back. And as you said, the cycle of being a procrastinator. So the fact that, for example, I want to pick up on the procrastination, that you are able to not just think up the book, but write the book. Did you experience any form of this cycle, procrastination, affecting your ability to finish this book? And if so, how did you handle that?
Right. Okay. So I actually started the book in January 2020, and then I put it down. I felt I needed clarity as to the direction to take it. But then I realized it was really stalling, because, you kind of knew what you really wanted to write about and the cycles you already were dealing with. So yes, and I made that point in the book that whilst I had overcome some things, there were some things that I was still dealing with. And so, yes, that issue of procrastination still pops up from time to time. So it's something that I'm continuously working on, right? And trying to put in the systems and the support systems in place to help me to maintain the discipline and to remove this, those delaying habits or, that we tend to follow.
I want to pick up on that because the statistics show that maybe about 86% of, say in America, Americans feel they have a book in them to write it, but usually less than 1% do. And I have known persons who have this desire to write a book and they start and they cannot finish, or they keep putting it off. So I want you to speak to those persons. What are some of the strategies that they can use to break that cycle of procrastination and finally finish the book so that they become part of the 1%?
One other thing is it's always good to share with others, what you want to do. And, when you have that good support system, they're always reminding you about it. Oh, where are you now with, how many chapters you have written yet? Or, I'm waiting for it so I can read it and see it. And sometimes those can be a motivating factor for you to read it. But at the end of the day, though, it's really how much you want it. Yeah, it's really how much you want it. Because I've come to realize that if you really want something, then you'll really make the effort to do it. And it doesn't mean that it has to be done in a week, in 2 weeks. The important thing is to make the effort and to do it the little bit at a time. And I think that's one of the challenges with many of us who procrastinate a lot. We become so intimidated by the big picture, the mountainous thing that we need to try to conquer, but trying to do it page at a time, a chapter at a time, it does work. Breaking it down into smaller pieces and getting that support from persons are really cheering you on, that I call them band of encouragers that are there to cheer you on and to help you, to complete what you have started, because that's really the thing, to complete what you have started.
Okay, I love that, because you are linking procrastination to fear. And we want to get into that a little bit. But what you've said, for those who are listening and you're struggling with finishing your book, you don't want to take 10 years like I did before I gained the courage to write my first book. But what you said is important, because although it took me 10 years before I gained the courage to write the first book, I started writing fast after that. And a big thing is because I found my why. So you're saying, how badly do you want it? And then you need to break it down. There's an African proverb that says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So what you can do is to avoid the overwhelm, break it up, as she said, into smaller pieces. So a chapter a day. And a big thing, getting accountability and support. And she keeps repeating that is so much a part of it. Do not be writing in isolation. Let persons know what you're doing so that they can push you to finish. But I want to go back to the issue of fear. It is one of the cycles you've dealt with, but it also factors into procrastination. What are some of the fears that authors normally experience, or you experience in writing this book, that you had to overcome? Talk to us about overcoming the cycle of fear and how that is even woven into procrastination.
Okay. All right. So let me look at it, yes, as you said, in the context of writing. So one of the things that for me I had to deal with personally was to become comfortable with the idea of other persons, a wider, cross-section of persons coming into my space personally, because, you're hearing things about me that you would not have normally known. And even persons who would have been close to you would not necessarily know about that. And, many things can can come from that, but for me, I had to look at why I was writing this. My experiences or my journey was to help someone else who was going through a similar journey to finish or to move forward in terms of, their own goals and their own dreams, and to realize that, that kind of support system is there. They're not alone in doing what they're doing. That for me was one of the challenges with bringing that out, and that's how I had to deal with it in terms of looking at why I was writing it, that it was not just about me anymore. It was about me becoming a blessing to somebody else. Fear on a whole, I've experienced, is a crippling thing. It's a very crippling thing that will keep you at one point, for years. Yeah. But I've also realized that fear is really an external thing. There's a difference between fear and insecurity, even though the symptoms are often the same, but fear is more of an external thing. Insecurity is more of an internal thing. But the results of fear can become internalized. And so it's important to try to look at that external thing that is saying to you, you can't, or, for whatever reason, and try to, it's a hard thing to do, but try to see it, for what it really is. Most of the things we're afraid of, they're not as big as we think they are. I've also realized that sometimes when you take that first action, it helps to build that confidence that you need. I was talking to somebody about that same thing just yesterday. Taking the first action is so critical. It is so important. Not thinking about all the things that need to be done, but taking that first step. And when you take that first step, it actually does something to you personally. You start recognizing that, yeah, it's not as bad as it appeared. For me, I would suggest the person try to work on taking that first step, because that's usually the hardest part of the journey, taking that first. And that comes again with the whole issue of procrastination, because we are always putting something off, putting it off. Okay, it's not, you're saying you're not going to do it, but I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it next week, but trying to make that decision to take that first step. There's, persons usually say that you do it while you're afraid, even if you're still afraid, just do it anyway, and that's a hard thing for many persons. But as you begin to follow those things, sometimes you have to stop listening to the voice in your head and just move. And it's cliche sometimes, but it's actually true that you just have to make up your mind to take that first step. Don't think about the other things and the next step after that, but the first one is always important.
All right. I love that. So it's about taking the first step, and action conquers fear. But just before we shift gears a little bit, because I want to talk about growing up, because that was part of the book, because it's a memoir and a self-help guide. You mentioned that insecurity is different from fear, although they are linked. So could you expand on that a little bit? What is insecurity and how is it linked to fear? What are the differences?
All right, so insecurity usually is related to self-worth issues and value, what we really think about ourselves, how we value ourselves. It's really linked to esteem issues. And those things can come up at really any point, but most times it's from an earlier, stage in life. And sometimes we're able to go back and, actually pinpoint where it started. But sometimes we go back and we're not so clear, when did I develop this feeling of insecurity? When did I develop this feeling of thinking, oh, I'm not as good as, or not as good enough, or so on. The fear, while the fear can translate into that, it's usually coming from a place of, as I said, it's more external, where it's usually something bigger or some obstacle. It could be a person, could be a place, could be a thing that presents itself in such a way that makes you feel smaller than it. Yeah, but that came from an external thing. So it could be a person who is trying to make themselves bigger than you are. And so it translates into a feeling of this person is stronger than me, this person is better than me. So you now internalize these things, and then you start to think, oh, I'm not as good as, I'm not as. Fear usually is external, starts from an external place. So it could be from a person that projects something onto you, and you have internalized that. You respond to that. Can be from a place, like where I came from initially, Olympic Gardens. The environment itself created this giant of a of a thing that made you fearful, and then you start to internalize that fear, and you start to wonder, is it possible for me to do this, to come out of a situation like this? People like us don't really get to a certain place, because this is where I'm from, I can do good, but I can't do as good, That's how I try to differentiate it. So
I love that.
yeah.
So that's a good way to segue into the part that I really want to shed some light on in terms of insecurity, because when you grow up in the inner city, there is fear and then there's insecurity. So talk to us about you growing up in the inner city of Olympic Gardens and how you are able to transcend those fears and not become insecure to the point that you're a successful public health inspector professional who is leading your field. And today you are an author. This is not what many persons expect of those from the inner city. So how did you transcend all of that, given the stigma that is attached to Olympic Gardens and growing up in the inner city?
As a young child, I did not know initially what my environment really was, right? But as I began to grow, later that maybe like about 10 years, 9-10 years old, I began to realize that something was off in terms of what was happening. My mother was really a big defense system, so she shielded me a lot from some of the things. So it was when I became now into a teenager, moving into, because I spent maybe about 20 years in Olympic Gardens, -2 when I went to Clarendon. But so that was when it became a situation where I was now internalizing what was happening. I was recognizing that I was feeling at risk. I was feeling at risk. And, the initial thing for me and what I always wanted was to leave, was to leave. And I think earlier in my Christian journey, as I became a Christian at a very young age, my initial prayer was that the Lord just help me to leave. And at that early age, I knew I heard him, and the scripture that he gave to me was, I will never leave you or forsake you. But at that time, I didn't even know where it was in the Bible. I didn't even know, but I held on to that as hope that I would leave. However, as I got older, I recognized the value of living there. I recognize the value of living there. So yes, I felt threatened as a young person because of the violence, the continuous violence in the area. I was afraid that I probably would not have made it out alive. We know a lot of people passed at a young age. So that was very fearful. But I was attending a church, so a missionary church, that was this big support system. It was like the nucleus in the whole in that environment. And so when I went there, I felt like there was a refuge. So that experience and that journey what helped me to transcend, right? There was always something that says I had to be at church, because for me it was my my place of refuge. There was still something that was allowing me to press forward despite those fears, because I believe I was being molded into this atmosphere, that was my only hope, I felt, of making it, into the person that I, at that time, I was visualizing myself to be. And so I would say that it was that support system that was at Tower Hill that was so beneficial and so crucial for me, and thinking that I could become a professional when the odds were against. While I finished high school, at the end of high school, there was so much odds against me. So that support system, because it was persons at church who kind of gave you that next step, and told you about this opportunity that you could try. And so that for me had really built a kind of internal fortification then against this, that I didn't know that it was training me for life outside of that. So even though outside of that environment you were not experiencing the same situations, literally, but you were experiencing the circumstances that required that same response, and that was already put or built within you. And so we had a really good pastor and a really good system that provided that support. Yeah, so I have to give credit where credit is due, and honor where honor is due. And so we had a pastor, Reverend Renard White, and this church, Tower Hill Missionary Church, that was this refuge in the midst of, everything that was happening. And so I know that I could not be where I am today as a professional, as an author, without that support and that building, as it were, from Tower Hill, this place of refuge in Olympic Gardens.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Plunkett. We've learned a lot because you're telling us a consistent thread throughout your story has been support. So in order for you to finish your writing journey to become an author, overcome procrastination and fear, it was the support that you got. In order to transcend the fear and the obstacles growing in Olympic Gardens to become the person you are today, again, we see support. And it's so awesome. It's so phenomenal to hear that you found support through the church. Persons often lambast the church and, what is the church doing? But hearing you say that amidst the chaos that you saw around you, church was your sanctuary and your place of refuge, and it helped you to thrive. So it's really heartening, and it really warms my heart. So big up Tower Hill Missionary Church once again. So as we bring this interview to a close, where can we find out more about you, what you do, and get your book, Valley Flower, Defeating Oppressive and Non-Progressive Cycles?
Right, so persons can go to my website. It's imagobyDrPlunkett.com. Also follow on social media, Facebook and Instagram is at Imago by Dr. Plunkett. On Twitter, it's at Imago by DRP. And, to get books, it's available online on Amazon, both print and e-copies, so they can get it there. And of course, they can contact me as well for their copies, and they could send me an email at imagobyDrPlunkett@gmail.com.
Awesome. This has been good, and we want to thank you so much for coming on the program, and thank you for being a shining example of the good from Olympic Gardens in Kingston, Jamaica.
Thank you for having me. It was a really good discussion. I appreciate that.
You're most welcome. Bye-bye. That was a very inspiring interview with Dr. Plunkett. And so I'm going to be reading a portion of our book for our short reads segment. So this is taken from chapter 5. I am not of average height. And if you're watching on YouTube, this is the book, Cauliflower, Defeating Oppressive and Non-Progressive Cycles. So here we go. I'm on page 52 of chapter 5. The danger of insecurity. Insecurity prevents us from launching out into the deep, of taking risks, of going beyond boundaries, of taking the step towards breaking oppressive and non-progressive cycles, and pushes us to settle where we are. Settling breeds mediocrity. Settling produces average. Mediocrity speaks to being average, not producing at your full potential. There's an interesting story of a man named Jabez, found in 1 Chronicles 4, 9-10. It says, Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, but his mother named him Jabez, saying, because I gave birth to him in pain. Jabez cried out to the God of Israel, saying, oh, that you would bless me indeed and enlarge my border or property, and that your hand would be with me, and that you would keep me from evil so it does not hurt me. And God granted his request. I'm sure we can relate to being labeled all sorts of names, sometimes by family members, friends, or school teachers. This has debilitating effects on one's self-confidence, causing insecurity. Insecurity prevents the individual from trying to pursue anything that they feel deep inside they're called to do and that they're passionate about. They become fearful of expressing these longings for better, for greater. They're reminded consistently of the labels placed on them of being average. Then she says, like Jabez, sometimes all we need to do is to ask for help. Seek the help that will propel you over the boundaries of mediocrity. You may need to share with someone the issues of insecurity that has constrained you to a life of average. I have had to do this. So if you want to hear more, go to Amazon and get your copy of Valley Flower, Defeating Oppressive and Non-Progressive Cycles by D.R. Plunkett. Right, so we're almost coming to the end of today's episode. And before we go, I want to talk about my latest authorpreneurship venture. Well, the latest one is that I am launching a new book in the Design to Win series. This one is called Design to Win, Young Achievers Roadmap. And with that, I'm having a Young Achievers Conference for preteens and teenagers from 10 to 15 years. But those who are 16 can come, and you can go to bit.ly/DTW Young Achievers and sign up. The link will be in the show notes. Now, this conference is about equipping our teens to win in life and career from early. And of course, it's book-centered, because after that, we're going to open the Design to Win Academy to train our teenagers in high school to become skilled workers in the book industry and to learn how to work online now. So at the conference, we're going to be showcasing some young role models, including one of the guests on the show, Kadeem Leslie, who is the author of The Full Student, How I Get Straight A's and Earn Six Figures. He's going to be sharing his story, and we're going to have other young achievers sharing. Antoinette Salmon from Olympic Gardens, who got her master's in finance by the age of 22, is going to be sharing her story of overcoming the odds, and we're going to be having presentations on how to be money smart and how to design your winning future. This is being done in partnership with Living to Win Curacao and Equipped to Win Gold in Canada. These are my friends out of Canada and Curacao, including one of Curaçao's recording artists, Amy, and a longtime friend of mine who worked in missions with me, Shumira, and my friend Carissa Goldson out of Canada. So that's going to be on August 14, 9 to 12, 3 hours to equip our young people to win at life and work while they're still in high school. We want to show them that they can learn, grow, and earn even while in high school, and be prepared for the world of online work now. We're also going to be having a parenting session, so I want to invite the parents to come on out. So that's it for my authorpreneurship ventures, and you're going to hear more about that because we want to expose more persons to the Learn and Earn initiative that is going to be part of the Design to Win Academy as we seek to raise up 10,000 entrepreneurs from the Caribbean and the diaspora by 2030. We want more persons to share our stories, to change the narrative, to write, publish, and leverage books to win beyond book sales and leave a legacy. So this is Ruth Taylor, thanking you for listening and reminding you to take charge of your publishing. Go pen it to win it and dominate authorpreneurship. Ta for now, until next time.
I'm Tamara Francis, educator and editor. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share the podcast with your network. If you'd like to increase your impact and income with books, visit authorpreneursecret.com for more resources, including the books Pen It to Win It and Authorpreneur Secrets. Join the Authorpreneur Secret Academy membership group for courses, coaching, and community support to write, publish, and win with books. Enrollment is in January and June each year. You may also sign up for one of Ruth's Publishing Made Easy courses or private coaching to write and publish your next book. Until next time, go pen it to win it.